Now we can leave all of these. And we're good, I think.
It shows that we're live, but it's not.
It's great that now the community council decides to go and clean the street outside. I'm not sure if that shows up through the mic.
All right, it shows that we're live.
Excellent.
So yeah, okay.
Is it also live on YouTube? Because that doesn't show up.
Um, we're working out the bugs, everybody. So if you can hear me, good morning. Okay, people are saying strong audio. I hear you and see
All right,
you.
great.
Okay. Thank you
Working
for your
now.
patience. It's early in the morning. I'm not thinking very clearly. And of course, this is my first time setting all this up on my own and making sure my guest can stream on his channel as well. So, yeah, again, thank you for your patience, everybody. Um, yeah. So, welcome to episode 1 of The Archivist. How this came about, I've just kind of been doing, you know, um, I've been bouncing around a lot over the years. I've been a part of a lot of different projects and been blessed to meet a lot of really great people. And I've always entertained the idea of having my own sort of platform to, project my thoughts and opinions of the world. And um, over the last many years, actually, I've listened to a lot of different podcasts, but I was blessed recently with being interviewed by probably my favorite um, podcaster, um, the Higher Side Chats. And it was kind of surreal. And I felt like this is like the moment to like start doing something on my own. And yeah, so here we are. And, if you're familiar with the Higher Side Chats, he does these fantastic interviews where he does like a rhyme to introduce the person. And, the archivist was part of it. And it just kind of stood out. I talk about Janice and the ark and what the ark symbolized of Noah. And yeah. So, anyways, just kind of stuck. I like it. So we're rolling with it. There's going to be bumps along the way. I wanted to like put out the most polished video or project that I possibly could. And I realized that I don't have the time to do that. And I just have to start doing it and figuring it out on the way. So, yeah. Um, but, anyways, let's talk about the guest. This is 13thMonkey, my good friend Mike. Mike, welcome.
Hey, good to be here. I'm sorry for noise from the background. It's the community council deciding to clean my street right at the moment we go live.
Yeah, not a problem. Could barely hear it. So, how do we know each other, Mike?
I think that's 3 years now.
3 years, yeah. It feels like
From
a lot
the
longer, doesn't it?
from the top. Yeah, it does, because we've been doing so much stuff over that 3 year period.
I think it's actually like 3.5, maybe longer than that, because we knew each other for a while before I moved back into the suburbs. And that'll be three
Yeah,
years in like a month that I've been living in
yeah,
this
for sure.
house.
You were still living on the farm back then.
Yeah, and we knew each other for a while. So I think it's
Uh
almost
huh.
4 years.
The time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, time flies for sure. Yeah, because it's weird. I, my we moved off the farm when my middle son was not even one yet. He was only a few months old. So yeah, it's almost 4 years. Yeah, almost 4 years. So obviously we all have our own little niche, right? And what's your niche, Mike? For people that don't know,
Mapping.
mapping.
That's plain and simple. I'm good with maps. I'm good with comparing old maps to what is currently given as our realm, as I like to put it.
Yeah, and 13thMonkey has his own YouTube channel. You can just search 13thMonkey. Um, But over the years, he's compiled probably, or is, I mean, I would imagine there's no one even close. The most, what would be the best terminology? The most complex, the most numerously plotted, star fort, ancient wall, ancient
Walled cities,
walled cities, buried buildings.
fortifications, castles.
Yeah, why don't you? I'm going to share your stream here, and why don't you just kind of go over a little bit, and yeah, turn on the buggy little dots. So for
The
those of
buggy
you
little
watching,
dots.
yeah, for those of you watching, I've spent only a tiny, minuscule, less than 1% of my time or Mike's time on Google Earth with it, but it's still, probably 100 hours. And you'll see here on the map, every one of these dots is color coded to a specific. So why don't you just walk the people through it?
Yeah, that's easiest. I use a coloring system, which I've explained in a couple of legends here, where all the colors correspond to a state of which this star or that star is in. So a dark blue star is a city with its walls still visible. The star is, where possible, located near to a cathedral or a mosque or a stupa, any of the religious structures that they had in these walled cities all over the world. And all the colors resemble something else, but that's easier to just go over whilst we're on the fly. Like say, for
Yeah. So just
example,
look at this, you guys.
in the
This is
Ukraine.
this is all of these are color coded and are different types, as he mentioned: star forts, fortifications, stone walls, stone towers, all kinds of different things. And you want to just zoom out really quick again and just kind of do like a quick little. I mean, it's insane. Does it tell you how many um, markers you've made?
No, it doesn't. But last time, uh, somebody resized all of the stars for me because I went with a too big a size to have it all fit properly, and he came to a 12,000 number.
So there you go. 12,000 points of reference, 12,000 notes.
And I think that's well over a year ago, and I've been mapping ever since. So it's closer to 14. Hello, Kitty. 14, 15,000.
Yeah. Yeah, people may not really understand that, but let's translate that into hours spent on Google Earth, and it's thousands.
Yeah,
Thousands.
easily thousands.
And there's a few, well, maybe one or two other people kind of doing similar things that you've, taken a bit of. Um,
Well, my great inspirator would be Colm Gibney.
yeah, that's right.
Like
Space in his name.
all credit goes to Colm. He made it's publicly available file of 1,500 star forts that you can get on
Yeah, so 1,500, and
starforts.org.
that was the gem back in the day. I remember, like, wow, look at all these, right? 1,500,
Yeah,
and you're 10 times the amount of notes marks. Me and Mike, when we first met, he had what, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 in America, and through going through a lot of the old war maps, the old Civil War maps, are the only way to see the star forts in America. There are still some of the big ones left, but the majority of what you see on this map of America, you cannot find. And through through a bunch of the war maps and marking all the old stone forts, we were able to find a bunch of these forts here in America. So you can see there's quite a lot of star forts. Obviously, not all of them are going to be, the crazy, majestic European style forts, but a lot of them were dismantled or buried under 100 feet or more of mud. But yeah,
yes, the mud flooding is extensive in the States.
yeah, it's pretty insane. Again, we'll get into some of my newspaper reports as we get farther along in this stream here. But it was public record in the South, especially, that they were dismantling these forts to build buildings in the cities. So as the populations grew, they were taken apart. Yeah, since we're zooming in here on, why don't we zoom out just a little bit here? And one of my favorite places to talk about in America, the Crescent City. For those of you who haven't watched Old World Florida videos, and the Gulf of Mexico being the Fertile Crescent, New Orleans plays a big role in that. And if you want to zoom down just a little bit, just to show them the canals, this
Oh
entire
yeah, for
area,
sure.
that whole canal system he's showing you right there is completely man-made. The entryways, New Orleans, all of the bayous of the Gulf are constructed from Mississippi to Louisiana. We're talking thousands and thousands of miles of canals, and nothing that aborigines could do with baskets. And the narrative they say for a lot of these canal structures all across the world in these time frames where it's even pre-horse and carriage, that just we're talking it would take millions of people, hundreds and hundreds of years to do some
Yeah,
of these.
and some of them are hardly visible, right?
Oh yeah,
Like you can determine most of these, but the moment you head to Florida, that
yeah,
that's
they've been
that's where the
covered.
real gems are hidden,
Yeah, yeah, and man, I should
like
have had
stuff
some
like
more.
this.
We can talk about my articles here, but I just want to showcase your work. That's kind of the whole point of this. But yeah, look at all these straight lines, you guys, just in Louisiana. And if you go back down to the main entryway to the port, yeah, right here, this whole thing is man-made, you guys. There are videos, not videos, old civil projections, post Civil War, of them of creating these three channels. So they had all these different entryways for different size ships to come into the port, and all these islands are man-made.
And you can see it too. Look at
they're
the
yeah, they're big water breaks.
angular lines,
Mhm.
canals. There's nothing natural about this. This is as artificial as the Palm Jumeirah, Dubai. Those big palm islands, World
Exactly.
Island. This is exactly the same stuff, just less fancy.
Hmm. Yeah, and my buddy Longo sent me this video. And Mike, we can talk about this a little bit since we're here. And Longo sent me this video while I was asleep. Um, a man talking about the entire Gulf of Mexico looking like a giant mining pit. And how often have we seen that? We've talked about this before
Yeah,
a
oh,
million
100%.
times, right?
100%.
Right. The Black Sea is my favorite example
Let's see. I was about to say.
because with the lidar pictures, you can see the stepping better than any other place in the world. And right off the coast of Louisiana, you see this large ridge, that kind of spotted ridge there that goes from the panhandle of Florida, all the way to the end of Texas. That's all salt. That entire ridge right below, yeah, that blue ridge there is all salt. That's that one that looks like a lava flow. Yeah, right there, exactly. That's all salt. It's like one of the largest deposits of salt in the world. And well, when you look into mining and the byproducts of mining and how they do um, big sites, is salt water is a byproduct. And when you're dealing with mining on a absolutely monumental scale, you'd be coming up with, especially if you're digging into large salt beds at the bottom of these excavations, you're not going to need all the salt. So that's would it help explain, you know, giant piles so big that it created, I think at some points it's like 500 feet, 700 feet tall, that salt deposit.
Yeah, it's nuts, huh?
So if you can entertain the idea of the Gulf of Mexico being a construct, which again, if you've seen any of my stuff with Old World Florida and Longo,
Yeah, absolutely.
and me and you have been talking about this for years, spending enough time. We talked about the Yucatan, we talked about Florida. Well, if you're mining the Gulf of Mexico, um, and we talk about the actual limestone formations um, of Florida and the Yucatan, that those could
Hmm.
easily be created while they're doing the mining operation. you're going to have tons of shells. I mean, millions and millions of pounds of shells, sand, all the things you need
This
to
is
start.
this is that original Coquina Fort, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. And Longo's done a great job talking about this. And,
Yeah.
it is, monumental construction, and the amount of bricks. I mean, I think it's the largest brick building in North America. And it pales in comparison when you start to, again, zoom out as we do so much on
Yeah.
Google Earth, and look at the whole world from a even larger lens, and entertaining again the idea that the Yucatan was completely man-made, that the bedrock doesn't start until, I think, the bedrock doesn't start to Tabasco, I think, somewhere around there if you zoom in. Yeah,
It's
the
a
bedrock.
even geologically, it's a bit of a weirdo,
Yeah, and we've
right?
talked
Because
about.
this is all volcanoes, all of
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
volcanoes, 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 and the whole
Yeah,
circle,
the Ring of Fire.
the Ring of Fire, right? And then you've got sand and limestone out of where?
Yeah, an excavation is obviously what I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking. Where are they bringing it from? Well, it make the most sense.
It's like you and Old Florida have shown too, right? The tunnels that you can just enter and dive into. It's the whole subterranean structure going on there.
Yeah, and in the middle 1800s, they said at one point, the tunnels were completely navigable by steamship. You could go under Florida, and the
By
same with the
by
the same with the
steamship.
Yucatan. And he had a diver on that showed some
Yeah.
of these tunnels, and man, they were just, you know, in his words, 6-lane highway in size. So I mean, you could imagine. And the Yucatan and Florida are so similar. They're like these paradises with incredibly strange and diverse amounts of flora and fauna and animals. I mean, Florida has just been wiped clean of most of its animals, and a true Eden. If you follow his work, I don't want to talk too much about it. Just if you're not familiar, I'm sure most of you are. Just amazing correlations, and the Yucatan was like that as well. It was their sacred
Yeah.
place. Every temple, pyramid structure on the Yucatan is built solely on top of a natural spring. I mean, similar to Florida. You got to go where the water is, and where the water is the energy. If you haven't seen the episode I did with him about radium in the spring water, I think those things are incredibly important and have a huge correlation to one another. Um, we're talking about advanced tech, buildings being kind of living, breathing machines, water, as we're going to get into with starforts and any other geopolymer um, structure. Water is going to be incredibly important to
Yeah.
its mechanism. And yeah, so what do you think about the Ring of Fire as
What do I
a
think
yeah?
about the
What
Ring of Fire?
it's such a mystery, but like when you look at a flat Earth projection, the Ring of Fire makes a whole lot more sense, right? But I mean,
Honestly,
do you think it's like part of Earth expansion, or
well,
magma is just, it's like the blood in our veins essentially. It's just flowing iron.
that's one of these things that I had sort of lined up, right? This and I talked about this yesterday in the stream, in the large stream.
And for
If
people
you
that
look
don't
at
know, again, that he just clicked over, he made it so nonchalant. But if his Google, he's got all these volcanoes mapped too. So that's what
oh,
that red thing was. Because yeah, me and you are so used to doing this. But yeah, look at this. I mean, we can look at anything. I mean, we spent countless hours just on the
yeah,
Aleutian
it's
Islands.
it's so casual for me to just go and flick over this and half ignore it. So I'm sort of paying attention to the chat. So if there's anything that you see on the chat and you go like, what is that? I want to see, just make note of it. But for me, this is all casual stuff, Ben. Yeah. The Ring of Fire. that's getting back to your question there with the expansion thing. Um, that's why I brought up the map, casually flicking. A lot of these old maps, very accurate, right? They made it a high art.
Yeah.
That's how it's seen. Like
Hmm.
map making was a high art. And if you look at this stuff right here, this is Turkey, then Anatolia. You've got the nice
Constantinople.
bridge. You've got the Crimean Peninsula,
Hmm.
the rivers, Black Sea, Arabian Peninsula, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, Japan, China, all pretty much mapped out,
Yeah,
spot
fairly
on,
accurate. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You got Chinese wall here, really important feature.
Yep.
And then there's Mongol. And you've got Tatar and Karakorim. This is the old Mongolian capital at some point.
Hmm.
Mongolia switches capital every so many years.
Yep.
Uh, anyways, that's right north or right south of a really big sea that they call the Sea of Tartary. And if we look on Google Earth again, and we put the cities back on, this is where Karkorin lies. And yesterday I got, I forget his name, Historia, Tartary Historia,
Yeah.
Luke. He gave me an estimated location of Tenduk, which is also on this old map right here,
Hmm.
Tenduk. So if we go back to Kararari, which is Karkorum, and we go back to Google Earth, where does all this come from?
Yeah.
But
Siberia is a mystery, isn't it?
all of a sudden, on all of these old maps, if you've got up to the 1600s, it's pretty much all it ends right north of Mongolia. There's nothing there. There's a big sea, and scary monsters be here. And then in the 1700s, all of a sudden, there's thousands and thousands of kilometers of land. Because again, if you look at this map, they had figured out this was Alaska, Americae Pars, right?
Hmm.
You got even the little islands, the coast of Alaska.
Hmm.
Flicking back to Google Earth, they got that shape roughly right.
Yeah.
They,
And there
they,
was
they
no
knew
land that
exactly
close. Yeah.
they knew exactly how the coastline of Alaska looked. Good stuff. And then they have that link up to the Chinese wall.
Yep. Yeah. And as you know, maybe not everyone's heard me talk about that before, but over the years, I've talked a lot about ancient walls all across Europe, China, and into the Americas. And um, even in the 1800s, they were postulating that the Great Wall of Mississippi, which is what they call the Great Wall they found in Mississippi,
Yeah.
that they actually demolished and used to build the capital, um, was a continuation, that the constructions were very similar, with turrets every X feet, similar stonework, similar width and height, and yeah. Um, so we're talking, if we can entertain ideas like the entire Gulf of Mexico being a giant pit mine, we can entertain ideas about walls going thousands of miles or across the entire realm, right? But yeah, so what do you think happened with all this extra land? Do you think it was a lowering of sea level?
What if this is the remains of these machines? Brett loving the leaf blowers. I think it's remains of what's that place in the north called on the old maps? Hyperborea.
Okay. Remains how, like? They moved land or
Well,
deposited and
if they
created new land.
if they manage to sink continents like Atlantis and Mu,
Yeah.
it seems very plausible that they can lift or sink continents like Hyperborea.
Okay. Yeah.
They being such a weird terminology here, but
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
it
The architects of the realm.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to be able to hypothesize things like that because you know a lot of the people, a lot of the natives in America said the Rocky Mountains appeared overnight. So, what kind of convulsions would cause such a thing? Um, and it's been often discussed that when you lose a large tract of land to some convulsion, earthquake or whatever, that in return another new piece of land will be pushed up somewhere else. And perhaps that's what happened here with Siberia. And yeah, we've talked about this over the years. All the new land above that line, that yellow line that you have there, um, everything above that, not everything, but a lot of it. And what is that, Lake Baikal, right?
Yeah, and
This
that's
is a
another thing.
mystery.
It shows up if you look again at that old map. Um, we've got city of Karkorim again.
Yeah.
Koras Lakus is the lake north
Hmm.
of Karkorim,
Yeah.
and it shows a river connecting to the sea.
Hmm.
And if we look at Google Earth, there is a gigantic river flowing north
Into yeah.
into the sea.
Yeah, but traveling a whole lot farther than that map shows.
But Lake Baikal is also a lot bigger.
Yeah, what is it? A sixth, right? Or a little less than 20% of all the fresh water in the world is there.
It's
Something like that.
ridiculous, right? There's
It's
so much of it.
that may be too high. Maybe it's 10%, but it's a lot.
It's the deepest lake in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, the crazy stuff they found at the bottom of that lake. All kinds of anomalies in this lake.
Also, very high on the candidate for mining operation list. Again, if you look at that little lake, it is here.
Yeah.
Compared, right? If you look at Lake Kithai, that completely gone.
Yeah.
The This is the Caspian Sea. There is absolutely no mention of the current day disappeared Aral Sea.
Yep.
Where is that?
Yeah. I know that's
And
often
the
a thing.
orientation of the sea is east west, where current day it's north south.
Hmm.
So construction of the realm and
Yeah. Yeah, the
making
Caspian
things
has changed
appear
completely.
and disappear.
Yep.
Like for one, this was a coastal fort at some point. This one causes a lot of controversy in the research world. Everybody, the one says that it's being covered by a mountain, and it's not.
Yeah, it's just been eroded away.
It's eroded away. And what is very quaint
Oh, wow.
is the civilization
On the mountain.
on the mountain slope.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, you can see where the water came all the way up. Perhaps it was even lower, obviously, but in ruins. And we often talk about how a lot of the land is just complete desolation, right? West of the Caspian. Um, it's quite crazy, and there are signs of, like, right there, like that just looks like you know the land was torn to pieces around the desert there to your right. Could never remember the name of that desert. Yeah,
This
all the
one,
land. Yeah, all the land
Gobi.
around it. Just you can see all the scarring, and it's like a whirlpool effect essentially on the land. There.
There's also no mention of the Gobi on the old maps.
Yeah, yeah. We've talked about the Gobi disappearing.
Which that was when the stream yesterday finished. I was talking about this outer edge.
Yeah.
That's the desert of Lob, and that
Oh.
does show up on heaps and heaps of old maps.
Yeah, just not at this scale and not becoming the Gobi.
No,
And what do you have there to the right of it? Just more. I can never remember the color coding. The black is walls, right? Or
black. No, black is something that resembles a star, but it could
but
be
this whole
something
area, as we were
completely
just saying,
different.
is yeah.
It
Zoom
could
in,
be
please.
modern, but it's interesting because this is something the Chinese built.
Yeah. Wow.
Try and find information about these. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. Zoom in a little more. Super interesting. We should definitely, while we're over stuff like that. Wow. Like, look at this. It's like a pyramid in the center. Not necessarily pyramid shaped, but a tall mound with stuff that's been obliterated, essentially, right? Just
It
foundations.
looks like it.
Yeah, just
Ruins.
foundations are left. The moat built around it. There's no way they built this, right? This looks very old. What's your opinion?
I really don't know what to make of these. That's why there's black stars, because it's not just this one.
Yeah, show me more, please.
This is a whole collection of them, and they're all similar.
With no one living in them.
There's nobody in here.
Yeah. Yeah, that one doesn't even have water in it. So the other one still has water.
Triangles around it.
Yeah, Paul Cook says, looks like a dismantled pyramid. Yeah, it looks like it's a place that just got blasted. You can see the foundations of stone buildings, but nothing left of them.
Oh, that one we looked at.
Wow, they're all so similar with the central mound. And look at that one's even got some of those pointy wall shapes there on the bottom of it. There's still some water in the moat or something. Oh, wow. And you can still see kind of circular, half circle structures. Yeah, and these are, for scale, these are literally out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Hundreds of miles from anything. Wow, and you got lines. Wow, they are so similar. And this just brings back what we talked about so many times before. They seem like devices, right? Like,
they do.
Would you really design, a city like that for a civilization and have them so far spread out, and the design and shape is so geometric, and we come across this so often, and this is obviously a hot topic with the starfort. What is the starfort? What's the purpose of the starfort?
Why is it shaped like a star?
Yeah, we've thrown around a million ideas over the years, and why don't you tell the people what you think?
What I think?
Yeah, about the stars and like possible, obviously just hypothesize their construction, their purpose.
For me, they're an evolution, a series of evolutions, and
yeah, we've seen
a whole bunch of fakes too. And by fakes,
yeah, please let's talk
I'm
about
not
that
saying
too.
They don't exist, but
yeah.
Humans have a tendency to copy things they appreciate and like or see the use of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Right. If we look, for example, if we go to Rome, because that's a nice sort of example here. History tells us that this castle was built 300 AD. So 300 years after the birth of Christ. History also tells us that starforts came into swing because of a certain architect called Vauban. who worked for Napoleon, who lived in the, what was it, 1600s. I'm not an exact historian by any means.
Yeah, we've talked about that. They want to lump the design into one person, obviously, but that's obviously not the case because so many stars come in so many different shapes.
Yeah, I bring up the guy because of the fakes.
Right, of
Did,
course.
didn't he just copy a whole bunch of
Oh yeah,
designs
yeah.
that
In
he
the
found,
whole the inheritor narrative, right? They're just replicating what already existed.
right? Because the whole Vatican is a star fort, as you
Right.
can see by the actual physical border of Vatican City. That yellow. I didn't draw this out. I did the red stuff
Yeah.
all around Rome, but the yellow border, that's Google. That's an actual fortified city with a bastion. It's actually so well designed that the Pope can ride this wall out of the Vatican into safety.
Yeah.
But getting back to 300 AD, if that's an originating point of star forts, that means that everything built at a very later date, like say the city of Den Helder, is this built by Vauban? Is this, that's what I mean by I think they're an evolution, especially the older ones, going back to the mound builders, getting really back to topic. That's what I think everything evolves from.
From mounds.
Yeah,
Mounds
mound
are like
builders.
the origin point, if you will.
Yeah, mounds being the remains of societies.
Yeah, not just burials,
It's yeah,
but
no, not
buildings.
not just a bit. Yes, I am Dutch capitalistic.
Yeah. So if anyone knows Starforts, it's the man who lives in the completely terraformed country.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I've posted a lot and talked a lot about Rome. Rome when they were, rebuilding or doing, trainways or building tunnels or doing advanced construction. They uncovered an extensive labyrinth, 100 feet or more in some places below Rome. And in the mid 1800s, they had already mapped 900 miles of catacombs below Rome. And they had estimated at least 3 previous civilizations lying below Rome.
This
So, and we
this
find this
also
all over the realm, don't we? Anytime I think you have a star fort, we've mentioned this before, but for people that aren't familiar with Mike's work, me and you often talk about tunnel systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say it's undeniable for all of them, but for a large percentage of these star forts, they're connected with huge underground systems, right? Tunnel
Yeah.
systems.
For,
And
for me,
and
that is like, if you take Paul Cook's work underneath Valletta,
yeah, oh yeah,
that article you brought up, and that's why I zoomed into Verdun in France. That
yeah.
article you posted recently about Verdun right after World War One.
Hmm.
The whole city was pretty much destroyed, but underneath Verdun, there was another city.
Yep.
And if the Germans had found that, and Verdun is a really big fortified, formerly fortified city, there were tunnels heading straight into Paris.
Hmm.
So that's Verdun.
Yeah.
That cluster of stars right here, and that's Paris. And
Why
that
don't we zoom
is
into Paris really quick since we're here? It's just
220 kilometers
of tunnels.
underneath France. That's just the one example that we have. Um, there's the Maginot Line that they built after World War One to keep the Germans out, and that whole bunker system. And they say they built that after World War One, right?
Yep.
That's the story that you get told, and that whole system of bunkers is also all connected underground.
Yeah.
The whole Maginot Line, underground connection.
Yep.
The, the and yeah, here you go, Paris, another former star
And if you
city.
see, for those of you watching, the orange stars there are like the the outer perimeter. And if you look at old maps, which I probably should add some ready, but old maps will show these stars perfectly, very well defined that surround all of
Don't worry,
Paris. There we go.
we've got old maps.
Beautiful. Thank you. So just look at this, you guys. Look at all the stars. Will you zoom in a little bit?
I'm not sure if I can on this one. I need to go.
And so, yeah, not only does Mike have, the most incredible advanced, the alpha archivist of starforts and Google Earth. Whenever I need a map over the years, I always just send him a little message. Hey, do you have a map of this? And 99.9% of the time, he's going to send me 1, 2, 3, 4 multiple maps. But just to give people an idea, since my niche is newspaper articles, I posted a lot over the years about Paris, and Paris is just like Rome. It's literally sitting on top of hundreds of miles of tunnels. And look at all these stars, you guys. I mean, countless stars. And it's really amazing. And obviously it's early in the morning. We probably have a lot of people, not a lot, but some people from Europe. America had stars just like this, huh? In fact, Boston.
We're going to look at that.
Boston looked very much like this. Obviously there was a larger waterway involved, but Boston had stars outside of stars. Charleston, same thing. America gets overlooked because, unfortunately, there were some really insane events here in America that absolutely blanketed the continent. How about we hop over to America and we'll show some stars there, and then we'll start talking about the farming and the terraforming of Middle America.
Boston.
Love these maps. So you guys, we can imagine almost all the port cities on the East Coast, if not the West Coast, because San Francisco, San Diego, Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, they're all star cities as well. They've just been destroyed. And luckily there was more advanced mapping on the East Coast, so you could still have good remnants of stuff like this. But America often goes unnoticed when it comes to the stars. And me and Mike have had to put in a lot of work just finding maps. And it's weird that the really only way you could find them was through military maps, because obviously the narrative had switched so much that in America, again, quote unquote, was so young that they really had the narrative of all these were completely military base only, which has been, in the 1800s, they were saying they weren't for military purposes at all. But once the Civil War narratives were locked in and part of history, and the South, the South had their whole history rewritten, just like so many other people that get conquered, their history gets rewritten. The purposes were completely different. They were mechanisms for protection, but not from like war or from other tribes. It had a lot more to do with commerce, water. What do you say, Mike? Water and perhaps pumping, hydraulic. You there?
Yeah, sorry.
Don't you think? Right, water. We haven't really touched on this, but one of the most common things between all these is water, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
And why do you think that is? There's
everything starts with water, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect thing to say. 100%.
Everything starts with water. Like life is water.
Yep. You need air, then you need water, right?
Yep.
And if we even go far enough out on a limb and we talk about what else do you need, maybe that's all they needed. There's some pretty good evidence that consuming food or caloric intake or energy was maybe
water, air, and light.
Water, air, and light. was the previous civilization, or maybe two civilizations ago, who knows, was the main form of living, and that ingesting flesh and crop was a relatively new paradigm. Um, you work a little bit of your box saga into that story, and the idea
Hmm.
of farm animals and crop production, kind of takes on a new spin. And um, me and you have talked endlessly about the whole world at one point had the exact same climate, right?
The big vapor canopy, right? All of the
Yeah,
trees.
the whole realm was semi-tropical, and you could find along the equator the same type of flora and fauna you could find in Alaska. And so something happened. There's coral beds all around, tropical coral beds all around Alaska,
Yeah.
Greenland. They find them on the southern parts of um, South America, places you shouldn't see it, predominantly the north as well. And so what happened? And, we talk about flooding. You remember years ago, we talked about that Chinese emperor who was made king because of his civil engineering feats, draining the
Yeah.
land after a flood. And in their history, they don't talk about just one deluge; they say there were several. Um, and he was building forts, levees, and canals, and the purpose was to drain the land of the water left over from a deluge.
To manage the
So
water.
exactly. So, do you think that these forts possibly play some role in um, draining the land? Maybe not just from a world wiping deluge, but regular flooding. I mean, we've talked about New Orleans already, and
I'd be,
the
yeah,
bayous
I'd
of the
be,
swamp were created to not only provide fertile places for growing and to help irrigation, but also were massive breaks during huge storms.
I'd be hard pressed to find that article right now, but there's evidence of a lake in Italy, Lago Fucina, being drained with the help of cities, pumps,
Yeah,
and all that kind of stuff in cities who were
yeah,
at that point, at the very least, walled.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Because
another thing. Like I want to like press out there. It's not just the star forts. If you've got walled cities in the shape of a star, a walled city in the shape of a square, it doesn't really matter if you use a circle, a square, a star.
yeah,
You're setting something up to contain or to expand into something,
yeah,
and the
yeah, and
walls
then
and the connection to the water play part in that.
yeah, we've talked about the idea of flowing rivers, carrying electric charge, and not only do they provide a mechanical movement, but they provide an ionic movement, kind of a telluric movement. And we're talking about a civilization advanced enough to build some of these star forts, which are incredible feats of engineering. I mean, a lot of them not only involve, um, advanced construction, but terraforming on a really, really massive scale. And not to mention what lies beneath these star forts. The fact is, I would say all of them have some kind of underground system. And a lot of the cities that we've talked about so far that are star shaped, look at this one, Nova Scotia here.
Yeah,
Yeah, the remnants of something, right? And what's another common thing we see? We see a lot of mining. When we do find an old fort, we often see mining, or you know, gravel, concrete companies taking over and having a business inside of the foundations of these old forts. Right? They're just crushing them up and creating sediments or gravel or whatever for industry elsewhere. Right?
and once they're done with that, they put a golf course on top of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about shout out our boy Victor. Um, yeah, we were talking about this so long ago, and it was newspaper articles again, years ago, 3 years ago or more, where
Yeah.
I was, in fact, I have one ready, and I'll get it ready here in a sec while we talk. But um, yeah, the golf, not just golf courses, but that's by far the highest percentage of things that were used to cover things up. But yeah, you'll find cement companies, golf courses, aggregate companies. Aggregate goes hand in hand with cement. Yeah, yep. We got Sherry talking about Cemex,
Yep.
former richest man in the world. Yeah. So if you guys aren't familiar with Victor, now the Boogeyman, he had a show called Radio Tartary. I was lucky enough to co-host with him for, I don't know, a long time, about a year or so, and we got into this quite deep. And this was before we got the YouTube punt, but Cemex, Lafarge will always be partnered up with golf courses,
100%.
which is incredibly interesting. So, and he did a great job of showing um, that these sites were connected with large, old, ancient constructions, whether it's mounds or stars or quote quarries. And remember, a large part of America was buried. I mean, more so than anywhere else in the world. And there
In
are
one
lava
go.
flows all along the Mississippi that are hundreds of feet deep. California was buried hundreds of feet. In California, they found stone cities, whole stone cities, below 400 feet of lava. They
Yeah.
have this. They have the same thing in Missouri. And what's the weird thing about it being there is where's a volcano on the East Coast? So it's
Done. Or
where's
so
that
they
coming?
say.
Yeah, where's it coming from? So the Pacific side, the Rim of Fire on the Pacific side was at one point absolutely on fire. I mean, just raining things down. My home state of Oregon, there are lava flows west of the Cascade Mountains, which is I live right on the Pacific Ring. I live right on the Ring of Fire. Um, and yeah, if you look at that valley, Portland all the way through Eugene, that's a giant fertile valley in between two mountain ranges. And it was blasted. There's just lava flows all over this whole area. And if you look at that mountain range to your right, you'll see those mountain peaks. There are hundreds and hundreds of miles of tunnels all throughout here. Some they say are lava tubes. Other they say they don't have an explanation for. And I think this like kind of correlates with what we were talking about with the forts. Like the underground tunnel system is not only connecting quote natural geological formations, but also starforts. So I think they're related. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but
these,
that again ties back to the mound builders, right? The
mhm.
people that came from underground, the ones that already survived catastrophe at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And yeah, what do you do? And it's like whether or not these cataclysms are on some kind of cyclical pattern, I don't know. But the underground is the most common part of our realm, and they've done a great job. The proverbial they of getting us to not pay any attention to it. Um, when I was in middle school, we took a tour. They called it the Shanghai Tunnels, here in Portland, Oregon. Um, they were giving tours, and I did this as a child, and we went to almost 3 stories below ground through the entire city of Portland. It's all closed off now, um, but they called them the Shanghai Tunnels because the narrative that they came up with and that they gave us was Chinese um, drug dealers who were smuggling opium and running brothels. Um, they would drug people and then they would steal them out of the basements of these brothels and these buildings and these opium dens. But, remembering all the things I saw and having, new eyes to see, when we talk a lot about mud floods, all of Portland is a mud flood. Salem, our capital, is a mud flood. 2-3 stories buried below ground. When we toured these tunnels, they went, blocks and blocks and blocks. The entire city sits on top of old, advanced stone masonry, not just brick, but stone.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure this is the narrative that is all across the realm, and I've seen it with my own eyes. So,
Like I'm always pretty careful to map out stuff that we don't have any conviction about. But this is how easy it is, guys. Like you can see it from above. That's
yep.
your old city. Done.
Hmm. And
And you
Salem,
can at this part have a citadel.
yeah, the old pictures of Salem from the 1800s, the buildings are absolutely incredible. I mean, you think about, Oregon was one of the last territories added in the continental United States, and we had insane buildings, like all over the realm, and but with a far tighter time frame than 1700s. Some of the older places on the East Coast, we're building buildings in Portland and Salem just as advanced and as crazy as you can imagine. But we're talking of like a very, very small window. There's no time. There's no 300 years of infrastructure. There's no 200-year-old cement companies, quarry companies. We're talking everything's brand new. They're just getting enough food off the ground to feed the people coming here. They're just finishing the railroads. People are coming by ship for the most part because there's no way to travel here by land. And you can break down the Lewis and Clark expedition and see kind of the fraudulent nature of a lot of it. That they basically were just mapping out a wiped out civilization.
Yeah.
Because I again on another field trip, we went from Astoria, which you'll see, which is a bunch of stars that have been dismantled. Some of them are still there. Yep, we used to go here for school all the time. You would take a tour from where they hit the ocean, Lewis and Clark, and we would go all along the Columbia River. And this river system is insane. It's just absolutely epic, and it's been just destroyed by some really monstrous dams. Damming's a whole nother thing, which we probably won't have time to get into. But yeah, it doesn't matter.
Even if you take the narrative they give us with these batteries, right? The scare of the invasion.
Right. Yeah. I know they changed the terminology a lot, right?
What is these two cannons?
Yeah. What's it going to do?
What is that going to do against an invading fleet? Oh wait, we got two more cannons here. Yeah. And we got two more here.
Yeah, and you can break apart the bridge that crosses this gap here is absolutely monstrous bridge. I remember being scared to cross it as a kid, just because it's often quite foggy and really quite stormy in this channel, and you get blown around on this bridge, and you can't see anything. You're like up in the clouds, because the fog would roll in.
That thing is big.
But yeah, so yeah, the whole narrative there, and they show that the technology for the cannons was so lackluster that you couldn't hit shit from that far of those distances. The turrets are too far inland. The gaps are too big. It doesn't make any sense, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's hydraulic mechanisms involved. They talk about those hydraulic elevators being for lowering cannons and stuff, but I just don't buy that at all. I don't think that's what they were involved with. I think it has to do with moving water. Perhaps for energy purposes, for maybe it's multifaceted, as we've discussed so many times. And we've talked a lot about natural gas, which, hate to gloss over that, but we've hypothesized natural gas being a part of this system. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yeah, that's mainly also thanks to Philip Druzhinin.
Yeah.
And his finds in Russia. Oh, yeah, we have to go somewhere here. One of these forts has an old connection to a pipeline. And I've been trying to find more because apparently it's a line of fortifications that ran from this city all the way to this city.
And we've hypothesized that the Great Walls were possibly gas lines.
Yeah.
Haven't we?
Transportation systems.
Yeah.
I think one of the most beautiful ones being this one, the Wall of China that you never hear of. Let's see if I can find a good section. We
So
can
yeah,
see
guys, you can
a
see,
lot of detail.
you're used when you type in Great Wall of China, you'll see the typical section that they've had to rebuild, and it's just one of those archaeological tourist attractions, which you find a lot. They don't tell you the correct story. They rebuild a tiny portion of it, and the rest is left buried. And there's thousands and thousands of miles of it buried. Um, like we've talked about with a bit of my articles here, they found hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of cyclopean style walls in America that are completely buried all the way to the tippy top. In some places they dig down 60 feet or more and they don't find the bottom. They never find the bottom. So some of these Chinese walls, they're just showing you the exposed portions that somehow avoided being buried. And what Mike's
The
showing you is that he's mapped huge, huge continuations of these walls.
the Chinese wall that you get to see on television and on Google is the. Not sure if that visible. I gotta wait for a second to have the have YouTube catch up with what I'm doing because I'm a couple of seconds ahead, which
Yeah.
usually is fine. But let's see. Yeah. So yellow line you can see here. That's the Chinese wall that everybody gets to be a tourist on and walk and do the marathon and all of that nonsense. And that's right up to sort of here. Let's see where we are now.
You want to zoom in just a little bit more so we can see the names? I guess you can't really see them very well. They just stay the same font. Okay. So yeah, where are we exactly? We're just south. We're just inland from the ocean in China. Okay,
It's pretty much right at the border of all of these old maps, like this one where you see this is that Chinese wall.
it just throws people off because, as you were stating when we first started talking, that a bunch of Siberia isn't on these maps. It just appears because
Yeah,
that wall
that's
looks way farther down. Obviously it's starting, right where the tip of kind of Korea is, and there's all this extra land above it, which on your map there's not much of that land at all.
yeah. Again, you go back to Mongol
Hmm.
and the cities of Karakorum and Tenduk.
Being on the edge of the continent, essentially, but they are no longer that way, are they?
Not at all.
Yeah,
Like I can show Tenduk on or not Tenduk, but Karakorum on Google Earth, and that's here.
yeah, in the middle of a giant landmass now, not at the edge. And
This
look at
this is
look
the
at this. Look at all these ruins, you guys. I mean, that's just old streets, old buildings.
we're a couple of seconds behind again with a couple of seconds. Yeah, there we go. Old ruins.
Yeah, it's always about 6 or 7 seconds behind, but
Yeah.
they still hear us still the same.
So that's the old city of Karakorin. Because you gotta pay no attention to whatever name a city might be nowadays, because it's really easy to throw a couple of letters around and change it into something that suits your needs.
absolutely. And that's happened so much, as we've shown. I mean, that was one of the big things that got me into linguistics, was how you really had to do your footwork with languages because the city names changed so much. And then look at that, so you guys. So he's showing you that, look where this city is in the landmass, right? It's right in the center of the screen of Google Earth, right? Keep zooming out.
Right where it says here, like circuit board cities,
Yeah,
Mongolia. That's
yeah,
it's pretty close to that.
right there.
And that yellow marker we've got here to the right, that along that river is the supposed location of Tenduk. I have to sort this out. I got this from Luke from Ancient Historia. Shout out
Yeah,
to him.
yep. And then
Um,
keep zooming out a little bit more. So look where it is on the landmass, you guys, and then show the map again. So look at that. So
Tenduk,
he's showing you the city,
Karorari.
which is probably only a few hundred kilometers from the ocean, but on Google Earth, it's now what 2,000 or more, I'm sure, way more. What am I saying? 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers from the ocean.
Oh, come on, give me a. I don't really need an estimate. A line. There you go. 3,000 kilometers.
I was close, so not a bad guess. So 3,000 kilometers, and in your map, it's probably what 300. So 10 times the distance in land that has arisen from nowhere. And Siberia is an interesting place. I think there's a lot more to this. We've talked about a lot going through Google Earth, and Google Earth has done so much for advancing these types of discussions, right? Because we can see so many amazing things, right? Just our time spent on the coast of Russia and the Aleutian Islands. I mean, you guys, the Aleutian Islands are covered in stonework. All the islands had people living on them, and they were just buried. Buried, absolutely buried. The Ring of Fire, obviously. Look at this. Obviously inactive.
Volcanoes.
Yep. But yeah, that island over there, towards Russia, Nasek, the large one.
This one?
No, the large one. No, towards Russia. This one, yeah, that one. All along the coastline, there are
Kamchatka.
just cities that are no one's there anymore, and they're just buried ruins, foundations all along the coast. You'll find like a place where you can easily spot it, and like this whole place is just there's so much landmass here, and there's nobody living out here. There's probably this is an estimate. It's probably only 10,000-20,000 people living on this island, and it's absolutely huge. And you can see the remnants of a civilization that there obviously were a lot more people, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah.
It's hard to find anywhere on the realm that didn't have
best
population.
Way to show that I can't find that article currently because of the new PC. It's stored somewhere, but showing that canal system here.
Oh yeah, let's get into canals, yeah, because that could be the last part of our broadcast. So for those who didn't see, we're in southern Africa now.
Yeah, going there right now on Google Earth.
And if you look here, guys, you can start to see as he slowly zooms in the line work. It may seem like kind of a pixelation, but let me assure you, it is not a pixelation. This is absolute massive canals. I mean, the idea of human hands building these is out of the question.
Everywhere.
Stellium referenced the article. I should have had it ready, but I didn't really need the specifics. But what was it, like 20 billion people?
Yeah. Right? So there's this professor, because it doesn't just come from nothing or just speculation. This has actually been researched. A professor found that this is very likely to have been a giant canal system. And what he referenced was, I'd say, about this area. Right?
Right.
Do you agree, Ben?
Yeah, it was a lot smaller than what we actually found.
Yeah. So if we zoom out a bit, again,
still absolutely gigantic.
Fairly large in the scale of things, but that area was capable of feeding some 20 billion people.
Yeah, we were at like 20,000 square kilometers there, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't even a fraction. There's probably 4 times that size.
And it goes on and on. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and if you guys notice, the lines to keep a straight line over topography is very advanced. Like that's something that people don't think about. Like we're looking straight down, but for lines to maintain their separation and their gaps over topography is incredibly advanced. I mean, we're talking like almost like 3D printing large mechanistic um, abilities there, because it'd be so hard again with the machinery narrative and the time frames to build something like this with a backhoe. Obviously, they didn't have them then, and this is already showing hundreds of years of weathering. You know, so where do
If
these
not
people,
thousands.
if not thousands, obviously more? That was just a. I try to be a little on the
Yeah.
low side, but yeah, I
Fair
would
enough.
say thousands for sure. So we got um, a canal system that covers probably what 40,000 square kilometers that could easily feed 30 billion people. Where did everybody go? And this is just one tiny section. And you got that river right there. Obviously, that it's. I mean,
Eh,
I've seen videos of that river that you just put the center of that dot on during the flood season, and it's
oh yeah.
quite
This is
incredible.
uh this is a very strange river in that it doesn't end in the sea.
Yeah, it's like it was designed to feed this irrigation system. When you say,
Yeah. And it does, right? Because you can see
oh, it
it's all
does.
along this river
Yeah,
system.
yeah,
Everywhere the river system touches, you can see the traces
yep.
of these canals.
Yeah, and you make the water level a little bit larger, and that river is going to flood into these canals.
Yeah.
And there's obviously been some elevation changes, and some perhaps mud flooding, changing the topography there, but you can still see the structure or the structure of it laid out pretty clearly.
Okavango. That's the name of the river.
Yeah, and for anyone that hasn't seen that or heard of this river before, it floods at the same time every year, and you should just see what it's like. I mean, it's literally life giving. You have hundreds of thousands of animals that completely rely on that flooding that delta plain, and it's so beautiful. There's really good video out there now. Discovery's done a few things on it. That whole delta area is just incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. It's beautiful, and
Mm.
you can imagine you take all the animals out of that area and the destruction, and you had a metropolis. I mean, billions of people, billions and billions of people. Jillian, good morning. And yeah, so why don't we hop from here over to Middle America?
All right, let me get the markers off because I'm pretty sure that's
All right, guys. So pay attention here.
what you want to
We're
show
gonna
me.
zoom. Yeah, we're gonna zoom in and out so you can see this. Now he's got all the markers off. Okay. Now you're gonna see a grid system appearing. You probably can see it already, but in case your resolution isn't high enough or something, we're going to kind of zoom in and out here. Now, there is a grid system that covers the majority of Middle America, and it's a grid system. What was it, 1 mile squared or?
I think it's 1 mile square in most
Okay, so
cases.
there we
Yeah.
go. Just stay right there. Look at that, you guys. Okay, zoom out a little bit. Zoom out a little more. Look at that. Are you seeing this, you guys? Okay, just like the system in Africa, but I would say even more advanced because it is even more geometrically perfect. And like we were mentioning, these lines maintain their straightness over topography, and that's like unheard of. It's so hard to do that. Um, yeah, just look at this. Now remember, this farmland was feeding America, in the 1800s, and these grids were already there. And as you get to the edges, they become less defined, but you can still see them. And they follow the rivers. So the farther you get away from that central area, You'll still see the squares. It's just they're less defined because the fertile is less soil. And then you'll see people doing the ring watering method. So they're still in the mile square cubes. You can still see them.
Let me zoom out a little bit. You can still
just to give you a scale, you guys, you can still kind of see it. Like once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you can see the scale. Let's go a little farther south and zoom in too, just to show people like how far the grid goes. Not too far south, just far enough to see the grid still. So look at this, you guys. Obviously, it gets a little more irregular. And you would think if you're just starting on Google Earth and looking at the city, you wouldn't even notice it. But as you lead from here and go up, it not only becomes far more solid, like go back to that city. You know, cities are laid out in this same structure. Isn't that interesting? I mean, you can see it plain as day here in this city.
You can see it. It's all squares.
Now you would think, oh, that's a city block. That's how they make city blocks. Well, I don't think so. I think that that's an idea that existed previously. And the farmlands show that more clear than anyone else. Let's just zoom right back in on that just to give people an idea again of what we were showing originally. So it's harder to see here. Go back to the central part where it's all still really green and it's really easy to see. Yeah. So yeah, look at that. You can see it here, clear as day, right? Now zoom in a little bit more. Just go in slow. Look at that, you guys. He doesn't have roads on. He doesn't have streets on. This is the topography. Again, you know, you hear, for anyone familiar with me, I often use the word 3D printing. You know, there's no real other mechanism to describe how they're laying these systems out and how this grid is as old as it is. The age of Middle America, the age of this continent is an absolute farce, and this is some insanely monumental gridding. You know, we're talking whole states, entire states, right? Well, Nebraska is like the entire thing is a complete square, the whole state. South Dakota is predominantly one as well, but it goes all the way up into Canada, you guys. Obviously, far less obvious, but for those of you with Google Earth, all the world's a stage. Yeah, it's definitely there's an architect to it, that's for sure. Who or what that is,
and
no idea.
And just to give a little bit more conviction, we're going back to Siberia again.
So what are we looking at? Oh, old gridding.
Grids.
Love it. So an area where there's obviously probably still not a populace at all. If it is, it's very small.
You can see the moment I get a lot closer that it is lines in the ground.
Wow. Like Nazca lines, but not just straight.
That's straight lines going straight through the forest. And you could argue that the Russian government would at some point like section this off for possible wood cutting, but then I started looking throughout Siberia. And all of these red lines, I could zoom in and show. This is just a
these
section
aren't logging roads.
of squares. Let's see. There you go. That's when they start becoming visible.
Yep. See the lines, you guys? That's lines through the forest.
So this whole square is filled with those little squares. The same for this square. These lines here, not perfectly straight.
Yeah, I remember when I was mentioning this a few years ago, someone had said that they were, they do this to put up telegraph and power lines, and you can just dismantle that instantly because we're dealing with areas that have obviously these same lines. You can see the kind of old age of them, and there's no one out here, so they're not coming out here and putting up power lines in the middle of nowhere.
No, no, there's no. I been thinking like, what if they laid out these grids and then planted a forest? Because everything tells us that there, other than the redwoods of the west coast, there's not many forests older than 200 years on this thing we call Earth.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We've
So
talked about this a lot.
what if they laid out the grid and then planted the forest?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. Um, Another thing that we've thrown around in the past is we've talked about seed vaults and
Yes.
purposeful creation of these types of zones, these different areas, right? And obviously, you are over the Amazon, which we've talked about before, but the Amazon's the best example, right? Because you have more ecology, right, than anywhere in the world, more types of living organisms than anywhere in the world. And
Like what
the
you're
old,
about to see, what you can see already, Ben, is credit to somebody else. I didn't map this out, but this is in the middle of the Amazon rainforest.
and what are we looking at?
Geoglyphs.
Oh, wow.
We're going to zoom into a couple. I don't know which ones to look at that are really well
It's okay. We'll look at them together.
sorted, but there you go. A square, a circle, a line. You can see, don't know what that is, but
And again, they're only becoming visible as they're starting to cut down the rainforest. Wow. Yep. This is like we've talked about with the lidaring of the Amazon.
lighter the Amazon and the Yucatan. That whole section, and this is just what that person mapped out. I don't know who it is, credit, but look at how many.
Yeah, yeah.
That's hundreds and hundreds of circles, squares, rectangles in squares, circles in squares. So
Yeah, and you can thank the deforestation there because you can see they obviously are following the logging. They're
yes,
staying, which again the lidar has shown what's underneath the foliage, but now as they're cutting it down, you're able to actually go onto Google and start mapping it. And how often does Google update their images? Would you say it varies?
it varies depending on the governments of varying countries.
Right. Yeah.
Really does. Like you won't current day get a lot of stuff from Russia, but China is surprisingly visible.
Well, not surprising. China and Silicon Valley, they're buddies for sure.
Like you can't walk the streets in Germany, but you can look up secret testing sites in China.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. Google Earth's amazing, right? It's done quite a lot for our abilities to, explore things that we would definitely not ever have the ability to explore.
for
Just
the
like northern Canada for, I've spent so many hours on northern Canada. Google Earth's an amazing thing, you guys. You can really get lost in it. There's just so much cool stuff to see. You can turn on the images and you can see people share their images, and you'd be amazed. Some of these places, these far off places, you can see where people have trodden and posted their pins and their images. It's just quite amazing. I mean,
this is a funny bit concerning construction of the realm.
yeah.
This is some of the meridian lines.
Hmm.
Now we need borders added. Right. So these are provincial borders in Canada.
Right.
We flick that one off and on.
Yeah.
And then see this border of Alaska. And we got North Pole right there.
Right.
The border of Alaska aligns directly
Perfectly.
with the North Pole.
Right.
Then you've got the border here,
The Yukon,
Northwest
yeah.
Territory in the Yukon,
Mm-hmm.
aligns to the North Pole. And the same thing goes for the time zones, of course. They align to the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
What is funny, though, is that the anti-meridian sits right on top of where Google sticks their ball together.
Yep, stitched.
So this is the GMT line. Basically goes straight through the UK, France, Spain. But all of these Canadian borders align to the North Pole. And then I started looking at some borders in the United States that align. And there is several.
Sorry, the giant dog is needing attention again.
Oh, that's fair enough. I'm half and half surprised the kitty found the amplifier and stayed asleep. That is a giant dog, Ben.
Yeah. I'm not a small guy.
No, I know. I know.
Yeah, just the geometry of it all. It's not coincidental, and they knew all this, hundreds of years ago, and they were making these maps. Come on. Leave the headphones alone, please. Sorry, guys. Dog's awake.
Another fairly interesting thing is I think it's South Pole. No, yeah, South Pole. The research stations everywhere.
Her name is Sophia, Mike. She's a puppy, but you wouldn't know it by her. Gigantic.
No, you would not. You would not say that's a puppy, Ben. My kitty should be done growing by now. They're about 4 years old. And the big guy is about what is that, an American 23 pounds?
Holy smokes.
10 kilograms.
That's big for a cat.
Oh yeah, he's huge.
Come on. Sophie.
At some point, if this whole streaming thing becomes a thing, I might actually get a webcam, and that will turn into kitty cam really quickly.
Yes, she's an old English. Yeah. She thinks she's a baby.
That she does. I saw that earlier.
Come on. So yeah, gosh, I completely forgot where I was. I'm sorry. Yeah, the map, the putting together of the layers of the image, right? We've talked about this.
The stitching together of a ball.
Yeah, exactly.
This
those
line,
lines are dead giveaways, and you can kind
and
of
the
see,
poles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you go look, this is the, and I can see if that becomes visible. That's the North Pole. And basically what this is the result of many thousands of images being cropped together at the top of a ball. And the same thing happens on the South Pole. Question 2 is, where is all the ice? But
yeah,
that's a whole different story. Maybe we can get back to that at some point. But the same thing happens on the South Pole.
Oh yeah, even more evident. You can see all the lines.
This is the result of many thousands of photographic images, rectangular images, getting cropped into a ball.
Yep.
And no matter how hard you try, if you stick
can't
all
hide
of
it.
these images together, you get a seam. And that's why this thing has been visible on Google Earth for all of these years. They cannot possibly fix this.
Yeah, you can't.
You will get a seam no matter how thin you make it.
Yeah,
You
because
will
we're
get a
dealing with
seam.
such huge scale.
Yeah. And the thing runs all over the Earth.
Oh yeah. Yep, you showed me on land. It's even more visible, yeah.
From the North Pole to the South Pole, and this is literally the anti-meridian, which is what is opposite of GMT.
Right. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Again, the time zones strengthen that same concept of taking a Mercator flat projection and stretching it over a spherical surface.
Yeah, I have respect for what everybody believes, but I do not personally believe we're on this thing hurtling through space at a massive speed. I don't know if it's flat. I don't know if it's round, but it's not this thing.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been a few good videos about the stitching, but obviously me and you have spent enough time on here that it keeps popping up. And yeah, the borders and Canada, obviously, I'd never quite realized in Alaska how perfect of an example that is of latitudes and all of that. But yeah, makes perfect sense. I mean, if we're talking about gridding off, I bet they wanted to have Montana line up with that red one there perfectly, but it just doesn't always work out that way perfect, but like just the lines of the cities are perpendicular to these same things. And look at that. I mean, Oklahoma, Colorado, Utah are almost perfect on that. Look at that. Wow. I never realized. Tennessee's on it. Carolina, North Carolina. Jeez. Like, how do you not notice that? So these people obviously had, and these are borders that are ancient. They're not just state lines.
No, they're there for perfectly good reasons.
Well, so we got about a half an hour left. So why don't we? You can pick a few of your favorite, maybe out of nowhere, obscure forts. Some of your favorite ruins,
sure.
some of your favorite cities. Let's just do a few of your favorites, and then we'll go over a few of the articles, old fort articles I have, and we'll end it that way.
Okay, so these might not look all that interesting at first glance. This is an old city, which is
you showed me this one. Yeah, look at this, guys.
Pretty evident. All of the rectangular lines tie to a canal system.
Yeah, looking very Venice-y.
And this is all very neatly connected via canals to the river.
Yeah, you got the organic river system, and then you got the obvious straight lines.
Is that maybe an old lock?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of sorts, a levee,
channeling,
a control,
more water into
system.
that river system. Yep.
And at least within all of these red borders, it's all rectangular lines.
Go figure. Wow.
And that's what I can see with the low quality images they give me of this area, because nobody requests images of somewhere in Mongolia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so will you go back to the canal system again?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you guys, just look at that. I mean, you can just imagine, a city built on, built all along these canalways. Like, these are just streets of a city, thousands of people, maybe even millions of people. Will you give me a size range? Do like a circle, kind of give me a loose square footage or square kilometer.
Roughly.
So, yeah.
10 square kilometers.
Pretty big. Yep. That's as big as my city, Portland. Although I hate to say Portland's not my city, but it's the biggest city near me. I try to remove myself from that city and avoid it at all costs. But just to give you an idea of scale, I'm sure some of you can relate. That's like an average, moderate, medium-sized city, and the canal system's going all throughout you. So it's like a Tenochtitlan or a Venice in the
Well,
middle of Mongolia.
that's what I wanted to show. Like going back again, looking at that image of that city. There's no real evidence of a wall or anything here. It's just all of these square buildings. And then we go to Peru. To look at exactly the same thing.
Wow. Jeez. Man, you don't even really see foundations. You just see the imprint. You can see the canals, the big wall too. Oh, the outer edge looks like you would see on a starfort.
Yep. This here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Several lines, several layers. It's the same thing you see with starfort cities as well.
Yeah, as they grow and extend, they just kind of radiate out from that original point. This kind of like, we say this so much, but this is, you just kind of see so many similarities, right? All across the realm. Although the structures may be slightly different, the materials might be slightly different. Oh, this is a good one. Wow.
This is in Iraq.
Wow. Very circuit boardy. Huge canal, huge wall. Wow, look at it. And that's a city above it that's actually occupied. Is that what it looks like?
Yeah.
Wow. Right across that big canal. Like these people just go and explore this ruin, They just wander over there, kids playing it. Oh my gosh, it goes on and on.
Yeah, oh yeah, this is massive. This is all along this canal, pretty much. And I just marked out some highlights. This is...
Oh, the wall. Yeah, look at that. I mean, this whole area's just been roasted. I mean, we know how thick these walls are, like those walls you just showed. Oh my gosh, look at this. This has just been absolutely
hammered.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh.
Absolutely hammered.
Chavez Bay, welcome. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. I feel very blessed. 100 people, never would have imagined. Hope everyone's enjoying it. Look at that. Go back, zoom in on that one more time. This one, I don't think you've shown me before. And that central like temple, that would have been just a huge domed building, huh? Because look at the shadow it's making. That thing's huge.
That is
like for all these buildings around it to be completely gone, you don't even have a foundation. You just have a layout, and for that structure to be like that, imagine what that looked like. Oh, there's a wall system right there. Go back down to the left a little bit, closer to like the water or whatever. Like, look at that. Like, has that been reconstructed? You think, or
I don't know.
Gee.
This looks. There you go. Like a couple of cars for scale.
Oh yeah. This might be a slightly rebuilt touristy area, maybe. Who knows? Jeez. And to put it to scale, we haven't been saying enough about our opinions, and that we've pretty much found this type of destruction almost everywhere, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
it is everywhere.
in the most desolate places, there's there. Like you were showing in Mongolia, middle of nowhere, Mongolia. I mean, we're talking. I'm a big adventure motorcycling um, type of person, and I really love backcountry remote riding. And you see some of these people that do the Peking to Paris or the rides through Siberia, and they go a month or more with nothing, even longer, not seeing anything. And they're staying on the route that most people take. There's some of this stuff is like you would literally have to fly on a plane for 1, 2, 3 hours to get out there or longer, right?
Yeah,
I mean, just absolutely remote. So we're dealing with a huge populace in these regions to build these cities, and where have they all gone? And for the whole realm to be like this, you know, scarcity and overpopulation are these catchphrases that we hear today. But
it's.
you spend enough time on Google Earth, what do you think? That's obviously a joke.
I want to keep it nice and just say it's baloney.
Yeah,
But I got
yeah,
I got a whole wallet full of curse words for that one.
yeah, yeah,
Like
and
honestly, it's nonsense.
yeah.
Utter
Google Earth is,
nonsense.
you feel kind of small sometimes in
Mm.
your geographical area, but you spend enough time on here, it really shows you how large it really is and how much is completely isolated. Just Canada. I've been fortunate enough to visit Canada a few times, and you fly over parts of Canada and you see literally a forest for an hour straight with no break. It's just mind blowing.
That's another one of the starforts of two in Canada that really make you go like, huh? But
Yeah,
why?
yeah. I remember first looking at this area with you years ago. Yeah,
This is just such an anomaly. It's permafrost.
yep. I remember
It's
you telling me.
frozen year through,
Yeah. So
and
how could it be? How could it
they
be?
managed to set down this perfectly aligned fort with
Hmm.
with blocks of granite, no mortar. They just stack them all up neatly, and then they managed to, according to the story, just leave it there for the
Hmm.
French to take it over. And
Right.
once the French have taken it over, it's like, war.
Hmm. and
What?
and and what do we often know with these forts? They often connect to bedrock. So it would seem likely to assume that this fort was there before the weather change. Wouldn't you say?
That's what I think with a lot of these,
Yeah.
especially the ones in solid bedrock. The other one in Canada is
Yeah. I
even
mean,
further north, I think.
it's silly in my opinion, having understood the foundations of a lot of these, that they would build it on permafrost. That seems very unlikely. I would um, assume that these structures all come before the Great Freeze. Atlantis.
Oh, that
Before the
was a good
ice,
image.
and before the weather change. Yeah. Wow. The snow really helps you see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're so remote. To say, what are you
Who puts
defending?
that down?
Yeah. That I
What,
mean,
what,
the amount of labor is insane. Like we've said, for people that are kind of new to the whole Starfort thing, they are on a scale almost unimaginable. The amount of brick and stone that goes into some of these is insane. We're talking walls anywhere from 10 to 30 feet thick, sometimes
yeah,
more.
that's something we didn't hardly even get into, like the size of some of them, because we mainly focused on America and
Yeah, you want
small
to show?
stuff.
Will you
But
show a few good ones from Europe, because those, are obviously the really the good gems that are still around.
yeah,
We'll do a
well,
few.
that's where that coloring system sort of is really helpful for me too,
Yeah,
because the
the
dark blue
yellow,
ones are the cities that are still walled and visible. This is Amsterdam, the
which is
image you
why it
used.
shows the thumbnail in a place you're familiar with.
Yeah,
And for anyone that hasn't seen what Amsterdam looked like in the 1600s, it's pretty impressive, you guys.
Let's see if we can.
Yeah, pick your favorite map. Oh, you're going to do an overlay. Yeah, love it.
There you go.
Yeah, you can easily see.
That's funny. Some Dutch historian brought out a video, very short one, and one of the things he mentioned was like, if you think that starforts have anything to do with water, you're an idiot, and I want nothing to do with you. These things are literally described as water mills. It's Dutch map,
I love it.
water mills.
Love it.
And every one of these little upside down T's with a
It's
cross
yeah.
is a mill.
Got it. Yeah. That makes so much sense because we're talking so much about hydraulics. And here they are obviously saying the same thing. They're pumping water. And for people that don't know, the Netherlands in general, the entire country is at what? Just a few feet above sea level, right?
No. I live 9 feet below sea level.
9 feet, you guys, below sea level. I mean, this entire country.
That's this whole place. Just for shit. How long have we been creating this realm? Well, for quite some time. This was built during World War II. This whole light green area, pretty much. So this blue line you see here, that should catch up on YouTube at some point. But this blue line was the coast, and that light green area was built during World War II. This whole area, this sort of island, in the 60s.
Terraforming in the modern day.
This dark place, this sort of outline that I'm going over with the mouse, YouTube should catch up at the end of that, was an island. Everything south of it was water, and this was a strip of dunes. That's why, like we discussed earlier, some of these might just be add-ons, additions, copies of something original that worked well in the past, so why not use it again?
Right.
And that's going back to that military narrative that a lot of people can't seem to wrap their heads around. Mm-hmm. I think they were used for war, but not originally.
Not originally. I agree. Of course they were used for war later on. Absolutely.
I think people shot at each other for sure. Like if you live in a city with a big wall, what are you going to do? Stand in front of it or sit behind the wall?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everyone knows where the safest place to be is. It's
exactly.
Like an earthquake. It's like a tornado. Everyone knows where to go. Yeah. And just to give people an idea of scale, the kind of levees and canals needed to keep your country from drowning is monumental, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's
everything is canals.
Yeah.
Like all of these little blue lines is all water management. It's all to get the water out to sea again.
And how much agriculture does your country export?
We're the second biggest food exporter in the world.
Second, you guys. So when we showed you all these different canal systems on an absolutely monumental, gigantic scale.
Back in Africa?
We're looking at a small country like the Netherlands, okay, who are using similar construction to what we've shown you, but has been destroyed. And they're the second largest exporter in the world. So you can only imagine. That just kind of goes to show you what that canal system in Africa, that whole system is almost as big as your country, right?
Oh, much bigger.
Yeah, much bigger. Sorry.
Much bigger. So like the Netherlands is, just for sort of a size comparison, the Netherlands is as big as New Hampshire and a bit of Vermont.
Yeah. Yeah. And so imagine, you guys, New Hampshire being the second largest exporter of food in the world. I mean, you would think, well, the rest of the world needs to get their shit together. And I just love that. I think there's no coincidence that you live where you live. You're kind of in the mecca of this, canal, um, um, constructive, mechanistic realm, in a sense, because your country is just like its complete foundations are reliant on these old world systems that are still not only being implemented today, but the oldest versions of it are still being used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back
And that
in
this is realm wide
1952,
is kind of what we're getting at. It's just harder to see in some places.
all of this stuff, all of these islands almost sank into the sea in 1952 during a big storm. So
Oh wow.
they built
Yeah.
all of these dams to keep the sea out.
Okay. Okay.
Doggy is happy.
So yeah, and kind of like what we were getting at earlier with the Gulf of Mexico, Sophia, please, and um, you know, seeing how from Florida all the way into Mexico and the Yucatan, they are implementing the exact same things on just as large of a scale, and that essentially, just like starforts, all of these waterways have been constructed or manipulated by the hands of man, and we're talking all around the realm.
Yeah.
This quote merchant class um, was extensive. We're talking about huge populations. We're talking about gigantic systems beyond even our wildest imaginations. These canal systems that would take millions of people to construct over hundreds of years. There's no real good explanation for it. So just connecting those things and showing how man is inherited these systems in many places and kind of
I think Paul could confirm this, but I think you can boat your way through to most of the major cities in the UK over
oh yeah.
canals and
Hmm.
rivers and stuff.
Yeah, I had a friend who lived on I can't remember what the boat was called, but
Canal boat.
it was a canal boat. Yeah, and he
Yeah.
said that he had traversed. He'd lived there for 5 years or so, and he worked as a software engineer. So he only went to the office one day a week, and he traveled all over England. It was
Yeah.
incredible. And he said, "Oh yeah, everything's man. All the canals are man-made. There's not one of them that's natural." He's like, there may be one that you go partly onto a natural waterway, but only for a short time, and then you're back on.
Yeah.
So it's showing that all the highways were waterways, not roads.
And even here in the Netherlands, we manipulated several rivers back into canals or canals into rivers.
Yeah.
Like this is the this dark blue line you see running here. That's the North Holland Canal. That's artificial up to this point,
Hmm.
and you can actually sort of see it, right? It takes a very long. It's all angular,
Hmm.
and right at this point, it sort of becomes a bit curvy.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I
this
can
is
see.
where a river ran into the sea at some point.
Yeah, and in countries like yours, just that people just don't think about it. But for
No,
you and the people that live there, it's totally normal. Isn't it amazing?
like
Like,
you got to think about the idea. I live in this city here. I'm not going to try and pronounce it in English. And this whole city is at least 3 meters below sea level, and we still managed to build a whole district into a little lake.
I love that little arch there too. The geometry there, it's beautiful.
Oh, this is Masonic as heck.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Oh yeah. Yep. Got the pyramid and. Hmm.
This part is funny because we still do modern stuff. This thing is called the Bastion.
Yeah.
And you see it, the
Oh
shapes.
yeah. Absolutely.
They even built little
They're nodding.
The
Yeah.
people that live here haven't got the faintest clue what this is supposed to resemble.
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah.
Yet they
Wow.
build it the same
Yeah.
here.
Oh man, yeah,
Nobody here knows that they live in a star-shaped thing,
yeah.
unless they
It's
have an
crazy,
interest in
huh?
Google Earth and looked at their house from above and probably went like, "Hey, that's a funny shape."
Hmm.
That's really about it.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole 2 hours just on the Netherlands for sure. I know that. It's
Honest,
incredible.
yeah, never ending. But that's um, that the funny story about that is we didn't partake in World War I when most of the Starfort destruction actually took place.
Hmm. Yeah, and I've mentioned that on several episodes in the past where I've talked about where the editing and the truth and the good articles really start to disappear is World War One,
Yeah,
and a lot of the massive city destructions of these really quote Tartarian places is World War One. Star forts getting leveled World War One. It's amazing the overlays.
100%.
And your country avoided that, and that's the reason why a lot of it is still intact. I mean, amazing.
I wouldn't say avoided that. We had a really good sort of argument not to be partaken in the war. We had the world's only legal cocaine factory,
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
and we supplied the entire World War I battlefield with cocaine.
Yeah,
Anybody from the Netherlands, you can look that up. The Royal Dutch Cocaine Factory. It even has a Wikipedia page.
yeah,
They don't even hide that.
yeah. It's really interesting because there's just so many correlations between cocaine and um, historical anomalies. You know, the pharaohs being found with it and its origins in Central South America. And here you are living in a place that was basically a jumping off point for the entire battlefield, the front
Mm.
line. It's funny, and that's what spared you.
Yep.
Interesting, isn't it? It's a lot of
The
places
Royal
like that too.
the
I think
Royal
for
Dutch Cocaine Factory.
the last little few minutes here, I'm just going to um, quickly go through a few articles, um, kind of talking a little bit about what we've been sharing today. And
Cool. Yeah.
um, yeah, running out of time, so we'll do a quick little article presentation. And you guys, 13th Monkey has a YouTube channel that he's getting off the ground, just like I am. Perfect wedding.
Criminally underused.
I thought it was a great first episode for me and kind of for him, because we've been friends for a long time, and yeah, he's really helped me shape my views of this constructed realm we live in, and yeah, I care for Mike a lot, and
But that's
yeah,
mutual. Just
yeah, it's
you lead
perfect.
me to other ventures into this realm.
And
Like your
115,
articles make me search for other stuff.
yeah. I mean, you're probably one of the few people I've been sharing them all with over this whole journey. Because there's so many, and God bless you for getting, 15 in a day. Sometimes, who's going to read that many, but we
I
got
got
115
time.
people on my first stream. That I feel very blessed. Thank you all so much for being here. Means a lot to me. I've been wanting to do something like this on my own for a long time, but was a little intimidated by the whole process. So it's really helping me feel at ease. Thank you. So here we go. I'm going to present my screen, and my dog is at her wit's end. Good thing we're almost out of time.
I want to go out, Dad. I want to go
Okay,
out. Please,
so
please,
I don't have a
please.
lot of time, so I'm just going to kind of go quickly. This is the fort um, in Haiti. I'm sure you recognize it by the look of it. On the summit
Yeah.
of the Haitian mountain, over 4,000 feet high, stand the wonderful ruins of the great citadel La Fière. I'm going to mess that up. Built by the Black King Christophe, which that's worth a 2-hour episode right there. The Black King Christophe. The connections there are amazing. Some of the walls are 80 feet high and
Yeah.
16 feet thick. And heavy batteries of old 56 and 32-pound guns are still in position. Again, these were added because this thing is in the middle of nowhere up on a mountain. You're not shooting anything with cannonballs because no one can get there.
Definitely bring this up in a future episode, and we'll show that on the map because
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
it's ridiculous. So we talked about this before.
Yep.
They were laid to guard, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to skip that because I don't really go with it. Springs of water still exist in the interior. This is why I wanted to bring this up. and there were secret subterranean passages and secret chambers for holding his hoarded wealth, much of which is supposed to still be buried there. So I'm just going to skip the rest because of time. But this place is absolutely incredible, and it looks 1,000 years old, and all through the mountain range. They say some of these tunnels go into these other mountains here, 10, 20, 30 miles away. And we have spring water, tunnel systems, gigantic walls, and there's no way these people are carrying these stones from where they said they came from. A lot of holes in that narrative there.
Just that small little area of Haiti has 17 starforts.
Yeah. Haiti is crazy. Haiti is crazy. Haiti, as those of you who've seen my work with Old World Florida, Haiti is Hades. Its position on the map is incredible when you think of, the Garden of Eden as Florida. We've talked about Cuba being the Kaaba, the Gulf of Mexico being the egg, Cuba being, the sperm, the letter Q being the highest order of the merchant class races of the world, the quote Phoenicians, who weren't an actual race or phonetic group of people, but were a merchant class of people, a kind of secret society of the oceans. And their highest level was the level Q, called the Eye of the Needle. And when you reached that, you were then taught the secrets of magnetism, and you were given your own compass. And this is how they were able to navigate. They were taught all the secrets of navigation. They were able to travel the seas at night, which most people weren't. And many of the navigators at this time stuck by the sea. They stuck by the shore because they were scared of the open ocean. Anyways, back to the articles. I just again want to fast forward because my dog. Okay. So this is a prehistoric fort in Ohio. 5 miles of walls, gravel roads connecting to other mounds. So this is important because it kind of goes along with what I had been mentioning earlier. Many of the mounds in America aren't just burial mounds. They're pyramids, pyramidal. They've been covered in tons of earth, some earth 10, 20 feet thick. So a mud flood or, who knows, a deluge, I don't know. But maybe the government. And underneath many of these, they're connected with large subterranean tunnels. So yeah, due to time, I can't go all of it. The walls were built of earth taken from a deep ditch, and the outer side yet visible. Basically, it goes on to say, much like Mike was showing, there's tons of canals. They're straight. There's pointed lines at 45 degrees, odd shapes. Here's Antiquities of the West, Alexandria, 1843. Stone forts and mounds, mixed settlements. The most interesting, a stone tablet with a carved 16 acute and right-angled strokes, pre-runic alphabet of the Pelasagians, allies of the Greeks in America. Again, I've shared this one before, long ago on Radio Tartary. I shared this, but it just goes on to show where was Troy and where were these biblical lands. Well, the stone forts and the runic tablets they find inside these stone forts. Sophie, please, honey. Seem to suggest the same things that we're saying, that you had a lot of people that we are, quote, Europeans on this side of the pond long before the founding of America. We're talking 1400s. One of my favorites here, this is a 1775 horn, powder horn, okay? And it's a map of New York, okay? Look at these star forts. Sophia, I know, just 2 minutes. I know. Okay, so looking all along these rivers here, these are all marked with star forts. I know it can be a little hard to see. And I
got most of these mapped out too.
So here's Albany, New York, going all the way up towards Niagara, and you can see that every city has a star fort all along the river. And this is what I've hypothesized, that every river is like this in America, all along the Mississippi. So here's Niagara at the top. You got Fort Ontario. You got all the way down. Star forts all the way down the river courses. Every city. I apologize, you guys. She's had enough. It's 2 hours is long enough. She needs to go out. Okay, so yeah, so no, New York again. You see, here's Niagara Falls, huge star fort. Yeah, and you can follow me on Twitter, and you can look all these up for yourself. Roman dodecahedron found along the Ohio River. This one's quite amazing. doesn't make sense
Gotta love that
perfectly. It was
stuff.
carved from basalt. So explain that one. And anyone knows basalt is incredibly difficult to carve. Shh, my gosh. Here's a Yorktown fort. If you're looking very European, you can still see all the major bastions and the acute angles. And guess what? Not only does it become a golf course, but it becomes a battlefield. They built the golf course on top of the old battlefield with people still buried in the ground. So yeah, we're gonna call that there. I think that's a good synopsis. And before everyone gets annoyed with my dog who's had enough, I appreciate all of you so much for being here. It means a lot to me. Hold on. And yeah, so thanks again, guys, and tune in for episode 2 next week. And I want to thank Mike for being here, and make sure to give him a follow. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, thanks so much for being here, guys. Sorry for the abrupt ending, but thanks again, guys. Have a great day.